Welcome to another episode of Unconditioned Mind. Unconditioned Mind is a project of Awakened Global, which is a movement that seeks to contribute towards gender and racial inequality. In this season, we're dealing with entrepreneurship and personal development. And I have an exciting guest for you today, Viwe Tini, who happens to be my niece as well. I've had many relatives in this season. But maybe you can start by just introducing yourself. Who are you? Where are you now? And then we'll delve into your career.
So as you beautifully put it, I am your niece. My name is Viwe Tini. I'm a chartered accountant. I've been in financial services for going on 18 years now. I have had the privilege of going through different iterations of financial services, having spent some time in audit and advisory. I then moved on to reporting and consulting. And after that, I then moved into investments, which has been a truly exciting journey. And now I'm looking to combine everything that I've learned and see what I can do with that.
Oh, wow. Okay, take us back then, Viwe. Back then, you were young. How did you even make the decision to be a chartered accountant? Just those early days, because as we grow, we forget that. Sure. But people are still grappling
Absolutely.
with those kinds of decisions and issues. How was that like?
So I didn't even know that chartered accountancy was an option at the time. All I knew was that there were teachers, there were nurses, there were policemen, and if you really wanted to show off, you became a doctor, which is something my mother really had in her heart for me. But having understood that blood and things are not my portion. In grade 10, when you have an option to then select your subjects, which subjects you're doing, I then chose to go with commerce, having noted that science is perhaps not my greatest love. I just had a thing about commerce, and I was the first person in my family, extended and the nucleus, to do commerce. And I got a lot of flack for it because apparently all the smart people did science. In my grade 10, we had a visit from Ubutluando, who worked for SAICA, who traveled the Eastern Cape and other provinces to create awareness that there was chartered accountancy and that it was an option that one could have as a career choice, which was the first moment for me to awaken to it. We were called into an assembly hall. I remember it like it was yesterday. We were called into an assembly hall, and this man was speaking to us, but he kept saying things about maths, and my maths was really, really sad. And he said that we needed maths rather than accounting, which was something that was shocking for all of us, because you assume that if you're going to become a chartered accountant, the important subject to have in high school was accounting. I happened to be doing accounting. I didn't think a lot of it. I gravitated more towards economics and business economics. I thought that was really a little sexy, if I may. And I remember Ubutluando saying, and at the time I was about to walk out the hall, because when he said maths was really important and I understood that my maths was, I then decided, he's not talking to me. I'm going to leave this to the people that he is talking to. But as I was about to leave the hall, he said something that really grabbed me. He said, this course is not for everyone. It's for the intelligent people.
Yes.
And my father had taught me from a very young age that I was intelligent. Now I stood at this crossroad of, this man is saying it's not for everyone. It's for the intelligent people. I identify as intelligent. But now this maths is going to be a problem. So I decided to unmake the maths a problem.
Yes, yes.
I decided to then invest in extra classes for maths. It is so foolish. I used to study maths the way that you study business economics and economics, because words usually come home to me. It's always been like that throughout the family. We're good at word subjects. And so this thing, it didn't matter how many times I stared at the page and I crammed it, but it was weird and I couldn't get it until I came to understand that you can't study maths. You must practice maths. I then enrolled for extra classes both at school, and there was a teacher who was at Msobomvu High, which was not the high school that I was in. I was in Butworth High School, and I understood him to be really great in the region in teaching people maths. So I got myself enrolled for those extra classes, and it really paid off. I I had no intention, quite honestly, of becoming a chartered accountant. I just wanted to prove it to myself that I could get the grades that were good enough for me to be able to qualify for a degree in BCom accounting. And attending those extra classes and actually committing myself to the process really helped me to achieve that. And before I knew it, I was enrolled in school for BCom accounting. And today we're a CA with 17 years, going on 18 of experience.
Okay. And then you start your career. How was that like?
The start of my career was necessary. And it reads a lot of why I stayed in audit for so long. There are two reasons I stayed in audit a really long time. One was to be able to contribute to the number of Black chartered accountants that the country had. At the time that I qualified, there were only 538 Black female chartered accountants. And even a small number of about 1,000, 2,000 odd Black chartered accountants at all. And I wanted to be able to contribute to making that number bigger. And so the number of young, beautiful minds that came through the system every year really excited me. And being able to contribute something towards the start of somebody's career, or realizing somebody in themselves that a lot of the times they don't even believe that they have in them. But also the year of my honors, I lost my brother. And my brother was an incredibly structured human being and very strict with me. And it was sort of a rhythm that I'd gotten used to. And so I had lost that. What I appreciated about articles, and I remain appreciative of it until this day, is that it gave me order, it gave me routine, it gave me that much needed structure. And so I was able to keep the ball rolling. There was a lot of learnings. One thing I am grateful for, unfortunately, I'm saying it on a podcast, so I can be quoted for it. One thing I'm grateful for about articles, was that it taught you how to deal with little money at a young age. So the relationship that I then had with money was then informed by understanding that in articles, you're going to get a stipend. And with that stipend, you must make things work and you must get through to the end of the month. And what that did for me is, with the years that I stayed in financial services, every time you got a little bit more money, you understood how to make your life smaller, because you had learned how to deal with money, a small amount of money at a really early age.
Wow. That's great. That's great. So when you start your career, right? I mean, you have aspirations, you achieve your goal, you become a chartered accountant, you grow in the role, responsibilities, change. You have to navigate many challenges, as you grow. You become a leader and all of those things. Yes, it gave you the space to, be part of developing others, which, I mean, you must always find fulfillment in whatever you do. But just share with us how you navigated that space as a young Black woman in a male-dominated environment, and how did you succeed?
So I do get this question on male-dominated. To be perfectly honest, I don't think I've ever been aware of how male-dominated financial services is until I came to the investments part of it. In as far as the early years of my career, it was very much Tuesday for me. And I say Tuesday because I was raised by men. I grew up in a household that had 5 men and my mother, who was a tomboy. That's my girl. And so for me, the world presented itself that way anyway. So I didn't have necessarily the awareness as I was going through it that there's a male domination in, especially where I did my articles was, and it changed its name so many times, I don't know which name to say. Where I did my articles was as at Sizwe Nzaluba VSP, and everyone looked like me. And there were a number of females. I had a significant amount of influence that came from a masculine perspective. My late brother was a very big mentor of mine. And so certain conversations happened very early in life for me compared to some of the other people that I then met in articles. I remember having a conversation with him when I was 17 years old that I must not stay in an audit firm and try to become partner. I must come out and I'll start a business on my own as soon as I possibly can. And at 17, you really can't navigate what is this person saying to you, you know, and why would you say it? But what it gave me, what those conversations and those discussions and him opening up what it was like for him as an entrepreneur, sharing his strategies, sharing his failures as well as his successes with me, it taught me to be hungry. I went into articles and I went into the beginning phases of my career hungry to learn, wanting to become somebody, understanding that you come from a rural background. My life is interesting. I've had everything from rural to peri-urban to suburban. And what it does, it gives me different perspectives and an ability to exist in all of those spaces seamlessly. And what it also does is that it gives you perspectives that make you a little different when you are interacting with information as well as with people. But my world has always given itself to me as male dominated. So in the start of my career, I can't say it was really a big thing. Most of my friends were guys. So it carried on in that. And I think whether it is a function of having grown as an individual and as a woman, and I became aware of it in the space of investments, there is alarmingly few Black women there. And understanding that your presence in this space then means that it creates an opportunity for somebody else to see what's possible versus what's not. I remember looking at my screen when I'm having meetings. It was white males everywhere on the screen. And at a minimum, as a woman, you sort of want to look across and see a woman. That was such a rare occurrence. At that stage, it didn't really matter to me whether it was a Black woman or a white woman. I just wanted to see somebody who somewhat is likened to me. And there were so few of those. And what I'm finding in as far as leadership is concerned, once you navigate your career and you get to a place of leadership, women have got such a specific and necessary leadership style that is missing in a lot of corporates. Corporate South Africa, or corporate anything really, is predominantly built towards the masculine. And there is so much that is an opportunity cost that we have in our corporates because we don't let women occupy the right ranks and so have the right kind of influence. It's one thing to let a person occupy the right ranks, but allow them to have the right kind of influence that speaks to that rank as well. And I believe that it would significantly shift what our entrepreneurs of tomorrow look like, what the leaders and the strategists of our businesses tomorrow would look like. Because I find that women have an innate ability to be able to access the human being beyond the professional. And so from a development perspective, I think it's so different. And it's something that we need to celebrate and acknowledge.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So how did you then, navigate those spaces? I mean, in those early days, we'll delve into, when you were sort of in senior leadership roles. But how do you position yourself? How do you grow and get the promotions that you want? How do you succeed as well in those spaces?
I have always been singular-minded about wanting to be somebody, and in particular, wanting to be mine before I was anybody else's. And what that looks like for me is exploring the full length and breadth of my aptitude as well as my attitude, and understanding how far I can get if I really bet on myself. So I was always curious. I carried it from school. I was once expelled from a school. It was a good expulsion based on academic merit. They felt like they couldn't nurture what they were able to identify in me. And so they wanted me to go to a school that they felt was better resourced. One of the moments that really changed and shaped what my future would look like, because that shift put me in a wider variety of people, multiple colors of people, and so allowed me to navigate differently. So in the workspace, I was always that person who was super curious, the people that are sitting, typically the partners sit in glass doors in audit firms, and everyone is really afraid of those people. I would walk up to those doors and I would knock on those doors and I would have conversations with those people. I would challenge them. I would ask them. I was always hungry. And I made it very much known. I was comfortable about my curiosity. I was comfortable about making sure that the right people understood that I had this curiosity, because I think the mistake that a lot of us make at the beginning of our career is that we're curious and we want to know things and we want to see how far we can get. So we speak to our peers only. There's nothing wrong with speaking to our peers, but you need to be able to network laterally as well as vertically. Because the thing about our peers is that we're sharing our dreams and aspirations.
Yes.
But when I speak to the people in the glass doors, those are people that can do something about my aspirations. So it happened then that I was always then top of mind with the right partners when the right jobs came along, because the kind of questions that I would ask, the quality of questions, I spent a significant amount of time at work. I remember Andrew Mashifani, who was my training officer at the time. He came up to me because I was always the first person in the office and I was always the last person in the office. I was always the first person in the office because I was learning to drive. I was learning to drive and I was doing my honors while doing my first year of articles. And so my brother Miso then came up with an idea that I need to drive when nobody is around on the road, or at least the fewest number of people are on the road. So I would leave the house at, if I did really well, I'd leave at 5:15. And that would mean I got to the office at 5:45. I lived in Centurion and I was traveling to Joburg, Sandton. If I was late and I left at 5:30, I would get to the office at 6. Now, formal work starts at 8. From 6 to 8, I'm studying because I need to get these honors.
Yes.
And so after a couple of, I don't know if it was weeks or months, I remember it was in the winter time. And so my routine didn't change because I was still a little unsure about this driving. And I found out that it saved me petrol to come in early and leave late, because then I wasn't driving in peak traffic. And from a person who was earning a stipend, it was very useful. So I remember Andrew Mashifane then came up to me one time. I was sitting at the cubicle and he said to me, Viwe, I don't care if 16 people pass this year. I expect you to be in that 16. Because you are the first person that I see here and the last person that I see. And sometimes I think you're not here. I go looking for you in cubicles and you're not here. But on the cold days, I'd go into one of those closed little spaces and I would study from there. And he started this routine of every morning he would come and find me wherever I am to say good morning.
Oh, wow.
And then it became our problem now, this thing of me passing these honors, because now he put me in a lot of pressure. I had to then make it our problem. So rather than wait for him to come and greet me in the mornings, when my test results would come out, I would take them to Andrew in his office and I'd say, Andrew, I never said we have done well in these 2 subjects. We need to figure out how to do well in these 2 because we need to pass. It was now our problem. And at first he laughed at me, but after a while, I think he realized what I was doing. So then he was intentional about giving me the kind of advice that would help me get those 2 subjects that I was struggling with to the right place. I remember when I went, because I did my honors in my first year. I did all of my board exams in my second year of articles. And when I went to Andrew at the end of my first year of articles, when I was going on leave to go and write my exams, he said to me, we have studied. He said, we have studied. We are ready. What we are not going to do now is study anymore. Every morning, I want you to wake up as if you are going to write the exam on that morning. And everything that you're going to do according to the way that you're going to do it in the exam room. So I'm teaching you exam technique. Because the theory, I've watched you all year. You've been here. And I took a gamble and I decided to trust it as advice and I went for it. And I got my honors. Oh my goodness, I was so happy. Doing it part-time is really hard. If one has an opportunity, and sometimes that doesn't mean financial, emotional as well. psychological as well. If one has an opportunity to do it full time, do it full time. But if you understand, like I did, that doing it part time was the option that I needed to be able to keep my mind off the fact that I just lost a family member, close family member. So then it worked out well for me.
Mm-hmm.
So in my second year, I then became this person who was known in the firm by the partners and the different people, because I wasn't afraid to walk into different offices, and I was quite curious, and I was always hungry to learn, and I wanted to be planned on those big audits, and I wanted to be trusted with the big sections. And I came back after the work to ask for my feedback so that I would understand. Yes. So that I understand how to improve, because so what I omitted to mention was that my late brother had 6 monthly meetings with me since I was the age of 18 until I finished my university career and until he passed away. And at those 6 monthly discussions, we discussed my performance. So it was part of the structure that I was used to, that I get feedback and then I use that feedback to make myself better. So this is the advice that I would give.
Yes, very good advice. Okay, so how far did you progress in the firm? And how did you get there?
I went up all the way to director, and I was training officer. Being training officer was something that I think that all the director body, the partner body, we use the words interchangeably, were aware that people development was something that was very close to my heart. It was something that I did unofficially for years, and we had a great, and by the time this is happening, we are now SNG Grant Thornton. We have merged with Gobodo Incorporated, and we understood that there was something important about imparting. It was always like a relay. So you pass on the baton, you pass on the baton. And what I loved about that environment that fostered in me was that we all looked out for each other. It wasn't a situation where you couldn't say, I got to where I got to because I was Black. We were all Black.
Yes.
You couldn't say it was because I was female. There was verifiable evidence of how you get there. You had a file literally that grew up with you from the time that you were in your articles to the different parts, iterations of the different titles and roles that you're going to get in the firm. It was a fertile ground of being intentional about breeding Black leaders who tomorrow would be tomorrow's leaders, tomorrow's entrepreneurs, and the people that we could look to change the face of South Africa. And so it was incredibly nurturing. I experienced the environment as nurturing. And in that, I then had a heart, because I understood that if I existed and I had this privilege of being around these people that were quite happy to set themselves aside and give off themselves to me, what that meant is that surely once I'm done with the stage, then I have people that I can impart on. And so one of the really brilliant things that we had was an amazing mentorship program. So you were mentored whether you were in university, if you're affiliated with the firm in any capacity, you had a mentor from university. You understood that you're coming into a structure as you're coming out. This is the role that you're going to play. These are the people that are going to support you through. And so I think mentorship, some people call it the buddy system. I don't know if the buddy system is the same, but I have an appreciation and a respect for mentorship and coaching because I'm a direct beneficiary of it. And having seen how it benefited me and how I evolved as a professional, as an individual, I decided that the young professionals that would walk through my office doors would tell me stories like they used to walk for 3 hours barefoot to go to school because they couldn't afford shoes. Then maybe there was something that I could impart in those people's lives that could convince them that they're as good as their wildest imagination. And once they got to the place that they needed to get to, then maybe they would see themselves in somebody else. And so it would continue to grow. So in a year, I was then charged with between 300 and 400 trainees. And I am still a little bit shocked at the amount of investment that takes out of a person, because each of them had a story. And so your office door, as you become As when I was director, your office door becomes open to these people, and in a day you're going to hear all kinds of stories, and some of them were harrowing, some of them were beautiful, some of them were inspiring, some of them made you want to be a better person. After the 3 years of articles, I was invited by Hali Kangule, who was the head of our department at the time, in assurance. And he said to me, Viwe, I'd like you to stay on for the partnership role. I said for him, for what? And I was really young at the time. I was in my third year of articles, for heaven's sake. And I remember saying to him, because I was about to have my first trip out of the country, I remember saying to him, Hali, I don't know what you are talking about right now, ne? But I'm going on holiday with my friends. When I come back, let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. I went on that holiday. I never came back to Hali to talk about it, but I did it. Oh. And the intention behind the leaders that we had the privilege of being led by was, and this includes you, there was so much intention. You couldn't move from one title to the next without being able to demonstrate that you had the stretch, that indeed you could occupy that position. So after my third year of articles, I then became a manager for a couple of years. I then had an opportunity to lead people, lead teams, understand the business part of audit. I think a lot of people, especially those who leave after the third year of articles, think that audit is about occurrence and completeness and accuracy. And part of it is, right? But that's very much the technical book stuff. But what audit gave me as I moved through the iterations from trainee to manager to senior manager to director and training officer was that it showed me the full universe of the business. I understood the ebbs and the flows of the business, what periods and patterns, what periods in the year are really good for the business, that's a boom, and what controls you need to put in place to make sure that you've got sufficient to make it through the lean periods. I taught one strategy, taught you a lot of emotional intelligence, my goodness. Nobody really likes auditors. So you needed to acquire skills like being able to tell people to go away and have them look forward to the journey, and disagreeing with people in a way that doesn't belittle them or reduce them in one way or other fashion. Mm-hmm. There are significant soft skills that were imparted, and being able to work with people such as yourselves who were there before our country had the freedom that we currently enjoy as Black people. And so being able to draw from their stories. And I think something that perhaps is missing today, or that we're sorely lacking, is that I don't know if we draw as much anymore. There's so much opportunity. There's so much in the elders that have walked the journey, that are comfortable with what the road looks like. And a lot of youngsters are like, hi, let's get onto a screen and there's so much in it. There's the business of it. There's contracts and on what it means. There's cash flow projections. It's not just accounting. Mm-hmm. It's not just audit. It is commerce. I like to refer to myself as a student of commerce.
Before we go into the exciting part of your life, going into taking that bold step to go into investments, let's just talk about things like purpose.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of misconceptions around purpose. What is purpose? Did you find it? Can you just share with us around that?
Purpose. Something that I spent a lot of years chasing and having a lot of arguments with God about. Arguments because I felt like it was a one-sided conversation, because I kept asking, why am I here? There's got to be a reason. It can't be just for vibes, There's got to be the big thing. What did I agree on before I came here? And my life was pretty normal, I think, or at least as normal as my life can be, until I had a near-death experience in 2021. And what I didn't expect that came from that experience, I had a bad case of COVID. There were times that I lost my ability to speak. There were days when I woke up and I didn't remember my name. And I remember on the days that were really touch and go, seeing my life flash before me. And there were specific inflection points that just stood out for me, you know? And I'd always been curious, but curious towards something. I've always wanted to amass information because I understood that I came from a disadvantaged background. I came from a background where if I wasn't pregnant at 17, what was I doing with my life, you know, type of thing. And that was the norm. That was how we were socialized. That was the society that I grew up in. But I wanted to see the world. And I wanted to know why I was here. There had to be a big thing. And so when these reflections come up and I'm seeing my life flash before my eyes, I see my grandparents. I see your Papa. I see your mom. This is what we called them. And I remembered the way that we grew up. I remembered the farmlands that we had. I remembered that we never went to sleep hungry. I remembered not knowing what poverty was until you move more urban. I remembered things being chased around. It feels arbitrary to the next person, perhaps. But I remembered, what do we call it now? Free range. I remember chasing chickens around to get some eggs. I remembered chasing some or other domestic animal for slaughter for meals. And then I remembered when I became well, when I started recovering, I remembered that there were people that we left there. That there are people who are still in that reality. And it's a function of what opportunities, what privileges they've had that gives them access or the lack thereof. And I thought, wait a minute. What if the purpose, my purpose, was to amass this information and then come back and be a bridge? Our reality, our shared reality is that we comfortably move through spaces of boardrooms and we navigate the different areas of our career that we need to. And it took learning and unlearning. It was weird. I mean, debit and credit is a little bit weird if you think about it. But if you consider that etipin, when you take cattle to etipin as lali, when there's a transaction that is concluded there between the two farmers, in the book Yetip, you have to scratch out the name of the cow and you need to put it in the other one. That is debit and credit. That's debit and credit that we know.
Yes.
And how the world of financial services gives itself back to us is not necessarily in a way that we can comfortably navigate. But these are not new concepts. If you consider umampuca, the game that we used to play with rocks, and you consider the concept of saving and what it means. Because umampuca is a kraal. You've got your stones in there. Those are your male and your female cattle. Now, as you play, you understand that, okay, now you have taken out a sum of 5 little stones, but your life costs 3,000. So 2 goes back. And those 2 that go back to the male and the female. They mate, they make more. This is interest. You play amapeju, marbles. You then understand, and similar to uspini, you then understand the concept of mergers and acquisitions. It's that there is a language that you and I have become accustomed to, are comfortable in, but there's a bulk of our community that is outside of that language. They don't necessarily not understanding it as a function of not having the aptitude to understand it. It's just given in a language that they can't relate to. And so understanding that our economy is where it is and that we have the desperate needs that we have, I believe that purpose, and perhaps my purpose, is to bridge that gap. and be able to navigate the different spaces in a way that contributes positively towards our economy and our country and makes one a responsible adult, but also changes lives of more people than just one. Because most of us as Black professionals, we are straining under what is called Black tax. Different people are offended by that line. And they would prefer to use different iterations of it. It is understood and it is respected. But the reality of it is that to enable by consistently being the one person who then helps multitudes of people, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If you and I went to school and we learned these things, what we can do is we can create an environment where more people can participate because we know how to reach them in a way that the way that financial services has traditionally been built doesn't understand how to.
Worried about the country, worried about our inability to produce leaders, right? That would be entrepreneurs and contribute towards rebuilding the country. Again, creating more opportunities for others. Because the world has been transformed because of entrepreneurs. I mean, if you look at China, China is where it is today because they focused on creating an environment where entrepreneurs can thrive. And that's how you build an economy. And when you look at Africa, we're not good at doing that. And when you look at South Africa, we've been good at producing many Black professionals, but we've not been good at producing many entrepreneurs, in spite of the fact that we've built skills, deep skills, and things like that. And it's something that really just worries me. What we've just spoken about touches on that. And what would you say to this problem that we're facing in the country?
First of all, I love the fact that you use China as your example. I have been studying the Asians in my weird little way for over a decade now. And what that means for me is I've been exposing myself to their countries. And in particular, I spent a lot of time just observing the Chinese. I remember a time, the first time I had visited China, the rand was 1:1 to their renminbi. And so the currency had equality, and I looked around and there was a lot of things that were still backward about their country and their nation. And over the last 10 years, to observe what they have managed to do has given me this idea about how perhaps we as a country could build more entrepreneurs and more leaders. I think that you may not agree, and I think most people don't. You may not agree with all of the policies and how the Chinese or the Asians have done things. What I find is a stark difference between how the Asians have done things and how Africans do things. And in particular, let me speak to South Africa because I have a lot more exposure to South Africa. South Africa has, I believe it's what is called a socialist economy. And I think where we're missing it, and I have an appreciation for our history and why we would need to have an economy that's built like that. But I think where we're missing it is that as the people on the ground in South Africa, what we're doing is we sit and we expect the government to do for us. The reality of our past is that a person who looked like me, what we got for education, if you didn't go to the exile school and you were not you didn't have the kind of affluence that would offer you better opportunities. It looked like being set in a classroom and being asked to label a cricket. Now, fast forward a couple of decades later, you ask the person that was taught how to label a cricket to run a country. It's not a function of the lack of aptitude in that person. It's what they've been exposed to. I like what you said when you say in South Africa, we have produced a significant number of professionals. Perhaps what we need to do is start being professional about the people that we expect to lead us. There was a time, the then Minister of Education, there was an open call, it was put in a newspaper, and I was a young one. I was hungry and I was deliberate. And I remember there was a call to Black youth to study the sectors, the industries where we didn't have numbers, and chartered accountancy was one of those. And the intention there was to get an impartation of information, how the economy works, how the things in the mainstream economy work, so that we do have those leaders ready at that time. What I think we are observing, however, is that the people that were in the room at that time are still in the room 30 years later. The people that were asked to go to school and get the skills that are required to be able to change the country did that. We've held our end of the bargain. We just don't see a clear entry into the rooms that would allow us to make the kind of differences that we're capable of, because we have the skill, we have the exposure, we have the education that is required of us. The second thing that I noted that just packs a major punch for me with how the Asians do things is that the Asians don't wait for the government to do things for them. It's a partnership. The private sector and the public sector are working together towards a common goal. There are, you can measure it both from the public and the private sector. I mean, in South Africa, we've had a big debate between the public sector and the private sector for the longest of time, and it just doesn't make sense anymore. It's not aiding anyone, and it's not contributing positively. I think what we need to do as a country and as South Africans is we need to find ways of being able to work together, public and private. We need to be intentional about what it is that we are doing towards our economy, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation. It's a beautiful country. It's got a lot of potential still. It's brilliant. And there are things that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of. And the people outside of our country, they can see it. And they can see us being foolish and misguided inside, fighting about foolish things like the color of our skin. It doesn't matter anymore. We're not at a place in our country or in our history where we can have that conversation in this moment. The conversation that we need to have in this moment, so that we keep ourselves from being sold to the highest bidder and being broken up in small pieces, is how do we work together to fix it? We understand the problems. We understand, we have the language for the problems. We understand how to bring about the solutions. We have the skills, the exposure, the experience, the education to be able to solve it. Let's get to work.
But I mean, when you're talking about the Asians, it's an Asian country. Everybody is an Asian, right? Except those who come in to seek opportunities. But with South Africa, it's very difficult to have a common vision about where the country should go, because, you know, our past, unfortunately, is still a glaring part of our lives. You know, there's a need to uplift those who were excluded, and those who were advantaged are still trying to hold on to whatever, you know, upside that they gained during that time. So I just look at this problem of the need to move our country forward, the need for economic transformation. So we look at a situation, for instance, where there's this division in terms of vision for the country. And I think this is what is paralyzed. I think the problem is that, you know, this divergent vision between the two groups, and we've not had leaders who've been able to bring us together, because this past is just such a chasm in between. And I just feel that, you know, we've sort of scattered around the issues, and we've not been able to deal with those issues such that we can just get that out of the way. Let's just deal with the past, heal whatever we need to heal, so that we can all do what we're talking about, where we can come together and build together to move the country forward. Because I believe that it would benefit
all of us,
everybody, because those who have the capital, they love the country, but they're always so worried about their own security. And those who are disadvantaged, are still looking for ways of how do we have a share also. And I find that these professionals that we've produced, they just worried about themselves. They have such huge responsibilities to still take care of their families that they're also distracted, not to focus on, okay, how do I use my skills to now, build enterprises that will build the economy, that would bring an inclusive economy. And until we just deal with this past and put it behind us so that we can be one. White people call themselves Africans. They really don't want to leave the country. But when things are bad, they are the first ones to pick up and go. Yeah, so that is a problem. We're running out of time, and I'd really just want to delve into this big step that you took to go into, yes, financial services, but completely different, and you didn't have the experience in doing that. We really are told that, must choose a career, stick there, develop yourself in that same career, because that is the only way you are going to be positioned to get into leadership. You walk into this space, not just, into a junior position. You walk into it as a CEO. I thought that was really brave. Just tell us about that journey.
Okay, happily. What I do want to start with is the inclusion part. When you speak inclusion, a lot of people, I think, depending, I had a question that was asked of me while I was on stage, and I was asked what I understood to be transformation. And this question came from a white man. And the missed opportunity that I had that I'm going to rectify in our conversation today is I wish to express that inclusion means you and me. I think that a lot of the people that think about how to create wealth and maintain their wealth have got an incredibly exclusive attitude towards how this country needs to be run, how the economy needs to be built, and all of that. But once you understand that the pie is actually big enough for all of us,
yes,
and everyone has something to contribute. It may be from a different walk of life because they have different perspectives, because they've walked a different journey, but everyone has something to contribute. And I believe, honestly, that Black people are really smart. That's why, if you look at our history, Eskom, don't beat me for this. If you go to places like Elokshin, the people there are not engineers, but somehow they figured out how to be able to gain electricity without having to pay for it because they can rig the system. So we were dealing with intelligent people that are starved for information access and exposure. And once you do that, I think it's the most dangerous thing that you can do for the economy. Because the thing about it is, if we refuse to share the pie, then the poor are going to start eating the rich, and there'll be nothing left for anyone. So I went into a position as CEO of a stockbroking company 3 years ago. And you say it was really brave. I should hope so. I'd spent over 13 years trying to get into investments. The first time I was exposed to it was in my honors year. And I remember being in the Eastern Cape and not having a lecturer who could teach us investment. So we had to fly in a lecturer. I think it was once every 2 weeks or so, Mr. Smith from Cape Town, to come and teach us. And I remember looking at these things and I was so fascinated. The graphs, they were sexy, man. They had interesting formulas, and the nerd in me, I'm a nerd, the nerd in me just, but because of my background, I didn't know how to navigate into that. And I didn't know what the clear route was there. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know that there was a thing called a chartered accountant, for heaven's sake, And so I spent 13 years at SNG. Mm-hmm. I derived a lot of benefit from that. I believe sincerely that exposure to the business of financial services, the soft skills, you could not make director or partner at SNG without going through 6 months of therapy to make sure that you are okay to lead people. Mm-hmm. Because people are a complex subject. Mm-hmm. People require soft and hard skills, and to be able to say you are safe to unleash on these people. Mm-hmm. And some of the investments that were deliberate that I got into my career, that I ascribe a lot of it to SNG, mm-hmm. they came in handy.
Okay.
And you can observe when you encounter people in life or later in your career that haven't had that benefit of that intentional investment and being able to understand leadership, being able to understand strategy, being able to understand people, how to build highly effective teams, it comes across.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I have a huge appreciation for in the career that I chose for myself is how transferable the skills are, how highly adaptable audit made me.
Okay.
Because the reality of audit is that in a day, you can have between 3 to 5 clients that you're visiting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, depending on the geographical setup of those clients, some of them may be online, you may be traveling, whatever the case may be, but each of them are in different industries. This was the benefit of being in a smaller black firm compared to the big 4 white firms at the time, because I found that a lot of the professionals that came out of the big 4 white firms were incredibly specialized. Whereas I worked in general audit, which was the biggest division or department within SNG.
Mm-hmm.
What that meant is I had access to mining, I had access to electricity and energy, I had access to investment, you name it, whatever the sector is, we were doing education, you name it, we were doing it. And what it does is it allows you to be able to quickly scramble and unscramble your brain, because once I have the meeting with you and I'm talking about your company and the set of circumstances that affect you, your business risks, my next meeting is with a different client who's in a completely different industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made me malleable.
Mm-hmm.
It made it easy for me to move, adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I got my sweet spot when I recognized how interesting a place I'd landed myself into. I got my sweet spot when I started treating the environment as a client.
Okay.
I decided this is my client.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I behave with my clients. This is the quality of professional that I am with my clients. This is the kind of feedback I need to be able to give. And the big thing for me was finally having an opportunity to go into this environment of investments after having tried and not being successful for so long, and understanding that I didn't grow up in the industry, that I was a chartered accountant, and there aren't a significant amount of them in that industry.
Okay.
And that I was Black and female. And how I then handle this opportunity determines what happens to the next person who looks like me, who maybe didn't grow up in the industry like me, who is as hungry and as deliberate and understands that they can provide value, but it's just a new environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Just share how did you navigate that then and succeed?
I had a couple of conversations with you. At which you
and my focus is, how do you take this bold step into a different environment? Because we don't believe we can and make a success of it. I really just believe that you can demystify this whole issue so that people can be free to make those choices in future, because you've shown that it can be done.
Okay. So what?
You don't even understand it. You didn't grow up there. You don't even understand this. Yeah, that's the essence of what I want to come out.
Sure. So the first thing I did for myself is I made mini system descriptions of the business. If you've ever been in audit, then you understand that each client, when you walk into the client, you must have system descriptions of the different aspects of the business so that you are better able to understand the business. Mm-hmm. So I took that with me and I said, okay, the first thing I need to do is I need to understand this business. I need to understand these people that I'm working with. What I took from my previous exposures that was helpful was I understood that I was comfortable with my leadership style. I had identified my leadership style. I knew what it was. I knew what worked for me. I knew what didn't work for me. I was self-aware, and given the amount of, the leadership courses, the executive leadership courses that we had to go on, your access to the therapists that were looking at your brain and whether or not you are right-brained to be doing what it is that you're doing. I then took all of that and I decided these are my assets.
Okay.
And I get to pull from them when I need them. I understand that the next person, and you will, when you're having conversations with people, you will meet people who will try to make you feel like because you didn't grow up in this industry, you won't understand, you won't know.
Yes.
I remember I used to have weekly meetings with the team. I selected the leaders of the different departments, and I said, I need a weekly meeting. And what I was doing with those weekly meetings was I was getting myself up to speed with how the business works, how this industry works, who's who, how does this strange animal work. And let me tell you, those weekly meetings, they were not great because the people in that environment, as an industry, they love their abbreviations. So they would speak in abbreviations. So there was 3 of us in a meeting. They would speak in their abbreviations, and I was playing ping pong with my head like this. Because now some of the abbreviations sound familiar, but does it mean the same thing that it means in my world, in my previous world? Are they talking about something? I would scribble, Moni. I would scribble these things that they are saying. And there's so much pressure. You have imposter syndrome. There's so much pressure to look and appear smart and good enough. You are the CEO. But you're like, and yes or no, but I don't know what these abbreviations are. And afterwards, I would sit and I would Google. And now, when you ask Google is going to give you the different kinds of meanings that these abbreviations, and you don't know whether they meant, and even within investments, there's this. So it was a mess. So after a while, I said, who are you doing favors by trying to pretend that everything is okay? It's not okay. These are people. Speak to them. So at the next weekly meeting, I said, guys, I let them speak. They did their thing. Okay? This time I didn't play ping pong. I was writing something or other. And I said to them, guys, I just want us to be aware of something. I make no secret of the fact that I have not grown up in this industry. I understand what I have to offer to this organization and to this team. I understand the value you have to offer to this team and to this organization. I do want to make you aware that these conversations that we're having on a weekly basis are ultimately going to require a decision to be made.
Yes.
And the person who is going to make that decision is myself. Now, if you speak in a manner that makes it so that you are comfortable together, but you leave me behind in the conversation, I will remain behind. But at the time when you need the decision to be made, I'm going to take you back that 3 months or that 6 months that you could have walked the journey with me. So we have 2 choices that we can make here. We can either continue our meetings in this fashion and understanding that I don't understand a good amount of what is being discussed, or we can talk like people, because all of it is simple. We all have the aptitude in this room to understand what we're talking about. If we talk like people, and when there's an abbreviation, I'm happy to learn. And from that moment on, the meetings changed. People would still make mention of abbreviations in meetings, but when they are done, they'll tell me what they are talking about. And a lot of it that I realized actually was that they use the abbreviations because they don't remember the full word. So when it was time to explain the full word, I didn't always get the meaning of the abbreviation. They told me what they were talking about. And once they told me what they are talking about, I understand. That's okay. This is how we move. This is what we're going to do. So, and I was quite deliberate about learning as much as I could about the people that I was going to lead. I spent about 3 months intentional about investing in each individual. I had one-on-ones with them. I wanted to know them as professionals as well as individuals to the extent that they were comfortable to share. Because I said to them, I need to know how best to lead you. And the way that I will do that is by understanding you. Please share what you are comfortable to share with me so that I know how to lead you best and how to get the best out of you. And it took me back to what I'd been doing for years with lots of people in their careers. And it gave me, then I could pull from my assets and my tools that I had brought to the experience. And it worked really well.
Okay. That's, yeah. I suppose you grow as a leader and as a professional and all of that. And I suppose when we get into like an unfamiliar environment. We get so intimidated by the sort of whatever we think we're lacking in that, when we forget that we've grown as a leader. As a leader can lead anything, you know, and therefore I've got something to contribute in terms of my own skill. A business is a business after all, and when you understand the business, then you know strategy, so you know how to navigate the environment to get the business to get to where it needs to get to, and to grow to where it needs to get to, because you understand business, and as we were saying, you understand commerce. Yeah, and I suppose we are afraid about nothing, really. Thank you for demystifying that story, so that people can know that you can make those career choices. And I'm not saying make them carelessly,
Absolutely
right?
Don't.
But you were very mindful that here's an opportunity that I've been looking for 13 years, and you would have been dissatisfied in your life if you didn't give that to yourself. And well done on that. So as we close, what last words do you have to these young people who look up to you, who also want to do amazing things like you've done?
Please, there's a saying in my language, "Inyati ibuzwa kwabaphambili." There are people that I look up to. You're one of them. And people that I have a privilege of being able to ask and to suckle at their breasts. This is both male and female for me. There are people who are fairly advanced in age, who are nearing or at that point of their retirement. And those people are a well of information. They're a well of experience, and they are starving for starving young people who want to learn. They are interesting experiences when you meet them, because they sort of take you through motions, because they test you. They want to see where you're at. They want to see if they can trust their name with you. Mm-hmm. And I think what is important as a young person, and I remember I have a mentee of mine who tells me this story all the time. He says, I took him out one time. We were at an audit, and I said to him, he was from Zimbabwe. I said to him, do you know Coca-Cola? And he said, yes, I know Coke. Why would you ask me about Coke? I said, because it's a brand. Now, what I need you to be aware of and mindful of is that your name is a brand. Do not put your name next to anything that you are not comfortable, that if my name were associated with this thing, I would not be comfortable. Mm-hmm. Do not handle or carry yourself in a way that would make the people that you aspire to be like to not want to be associated with you. Mm-hmm. Understand that you are a brand. Understand that you are an asset, and make the necessary investments. Mm-hmm. Necessary investments is not going to look like the popular stuff. It's the things that are difficult to do, that are not nice to do. I remember at some stage at SNG, somebody actually said, one of the leaders said to me, and I was so bitter, I was so angry. He said, here, we are making CEOs. It didn't make sense to me at the time. It didn't seem realistic or even reasonable, because what they were asking us to do was just hard and like, it wasn't sexy, mm-hmm. you know? But when I was then later CEO from that experience, and understanding that I was pulling from those experiences, mm-hmm. I then had an appreciation for, you know, the journey towards the glitz and the glams that everyone wants to get to mm-hmm. is not always pretty. Along the way, there's pit stops. There's not so appealing looking things that you have to do, mm-hmm. but acquire skill. Don't just learn for the sake of learning, mm-hmm. skill. And the thing about it is, a lot of youngsters, I feel, are studying courses because university. You don't do that. Mm-hmm. You look at the lay of the land, the lay of the country, the lay of the economy. You understand where are the problem areas. Mm-hmm. You understand where is the country in need. It's commerce. Everything that you do about your life, you're studying what you study, where you work, it's all commerce. Mm-hmm. So how does it all then come together? And how do you carry yourself as a professional, as an individual, in a manner that will attract the kind of people that will need to help you along the way, because you will need your destiny helpers along the way. But the reality of it is the high caliber people that we all aspire to, they're looking for something specific. They're looking for specific qualities. Embody them. Learn how to be a decent human being and embody the qualities. It's all commerce. What is the demand? Supply.
Wow. Thank you so much, Viwe, for this insightful interview. I know that my listeners will really glean some really insight and clarity, because you know what, the most important thing in life is clarity, so that when you make decisions regarding your life, you are clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. This is an amazing conversation.